We will also be announcing our 2020 Lenovo Scholar Network fan favorite mobile app winner during tomorrow's closing ceremony. You still have time to cast your final votes through midnight tonight Eastern Standard Time. Once again, we're sending our congratulations to all of the winning teams this year, and we look forward to celebrating our fan favorite winner tomorrow afternoon. You won't want to miss it. And now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Chancellor Henry Mack. Mr. Mack currently serves as the Chancellor for Career, Technical, and Adult Education at the Florida Department of Education, a position he's held since November of 2019. As Chancellor, he helps oversee all workforce education programs and economic development initiatives for the department. We welcome the Chancellor, who will be providing us with an update on the state of CTE.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you very much for having me here this morning to address you, to talk about the future of CTE, but also too generally about the future of workforce education and the future of work. Precisely the kind of thing that NAF prepares all of our students to understand and to equip themselves with, namely the necessary skills to thrive in a very disruptive and COVID notwithstanding nature of work. So again, so happy, so thrilled, so humbled to be with you today to talk again generally about career and technical education. And if you may, permit me to do so by way of just exploring some of the things that are happening here in the state of Florida with our reopening plan. If you can go to the next slide, please. We know that having our students back on campus in an in-person learning environment is the presumed, or rather best method or approach to, again, learning and to ensuring learning can occur successfully. We know of the efficacy and the transformative power that occurs between a teacher and a student when the teacher and the student are interacting in person. And so with that in mind, we're trying to, again, position the state of Florida to understand the value of reopening schools in view of that kind of moral purpose, namely to close achievement gaps between students and their learning. We also, though, know too how important in-person education is for the future of the state's economy, not just Florida, but across the country. We ought not to think that economic viability and prosperity should be separate and apart from public health. In other words, public health in some way depends upon the ability of everyone to get back to work and to contribute again to the state's economic prosperity aims. And so with those two ends in mind, namely closing achievement gaps between students, as well as continuing to provide the kind of talent that our state economy needs, but also knowing that our parents need to get back to work too. It's with those two aims in mind, really, that the state of Florida is moving in the direction that it is, using a very safe, measured approach that we have sort of classically dubbed the dimmer switch approach. If you can go to the next slide, please. So some of the guiding principles, again, are this: to understand how we can transition safely to the reopening of schools and to the engagement of our students in especially their career and technical education courses. Next slide, please. Just some interesting data that I thought I would share around how the impact of school closures has indeed affected not just students, but individuals across the country, and particularly too in the state of Florida, and the proportionate sort of impact that this has on the poor and the marginalized. We know that the vast majority of businesses have experienced greater than average decline in revenue across the country, and many employees will want to find reemployment where their current skill sets match demand from employers, whose products and services facilitate relief and response to the COVID disruption. Next slide, please. But for far too many, the crisis will further exacerbate the disconnect between their current skills and opportunities for reemployment or advancement. And we know that our residents need and they want additional education in new skills to re-enter the workforce. And this is where NAF comes in. And this is why it is so important to, again, double down on career and technical education and workforce education and training, specifically within our K-12 schools, so as to prepare students for the value that is, again, a viable career in the future world of work, a world of work that we know, again, is becoming highly disrupted. Next slide, please. The future world of work, as we all know, will experience dramatic shifts in skills development, specifically as we contemplate the interaction of technology within everyday occupations. And while we know that technology, AI, and automation does impact various aspects of many jobs, we can anticipate, at least according to the McKinsey Group, that it will only threaten about 5% of occupations with complete obsolescence. In other words, AI and automation may impact many jobs by way of their complete annihilation, but for the most part, it's going to interact or rather disrupt how you do things on a day-to-day basis. So it's with that in mind that we really need to think about how we're preparing our students to understand and facilitate human-to-machine interaction in a new and integrated and innovative way. But we also, too, we need to focus on lower wage workers that are caught between the forces of business closures and school campus closures. And for this reason, again, it's sort of super important and widely believed that, again, we need to move, again, to reopen schools and begin to the in-person engagement. And it's even interesting to sort of think about how you do that in CTE, which I'll talk about in a second. If you could skip to the next slide, please. You can, again, think about this whole context, again, within the gaps that will occur in learning. And so for far too many students, especially, again, our most vulnerable, the gaps can only be exacerbated by prolonged absence or disengagement from instruction. You can skip to 2 slides, please. I want to get right to where Florida is sort of like leading the way, I guess, with its understanding of how to grapple with these gaps, as well as closing economic gaps and beginning sort of our conversation around economic prosperity and development. And so here's where workforce education and CTE comes in, right? We now know that we have an in-demand sort of environment for career and technical education and work-based learning experiences so that we can provide the hands-on, innovative, in-demand skill training for our students so that they can rapidly engage in a post-secondary credential and take that into the workforce. Next slide, please. With that in mind, we are focusing on, if you can skip to the next slide again, please. We are focusing on these short-term career certificate, in-demand technical certification programs. You can actually skip to slide 17, that would be great, and then just rapidly run through 17 through 20. We are focusing on these short-term, in-demand technical certificate training programs. So from the K-12 perspective and from NAF's perspective, we're trying to, again, align the entire system in the state of Florida to understand the potential in and around short-term credentialing opportunities within career and technical education. You could just rapidly go through all of these slides if you don't mind, and I'll just keep up as you go. There is a clear disconnect between the world of work and the world of learning, at least across the state of Florida, and I would submit across the United States. You could pause here on this one, please. And this disconnect has had significant effects by way of employers not really understanding what kind of educational supply they're getting. In other words, we have a weak labor market information to education system. Workers really don't know what skills they need, and educators don't know what skills to educate for. You can skip to the next slide. Employers don't know what skills workers have. And so the transition from school to work is a singular focus, not only here at the Florida Department of Education, but I would submit nationwide. And so what you're looking at now are just some great examples across the state college system of Florida that is doing exactly that, attempting to align skills to employer demand. And you could rapidly go through these slides. These are just examples from across the state on how, again, we're focusing on career and technical education, and again, the value of their alignment to industry. And I would submit the fact that we are confronted with a weak labor market system and not knowing really how best to prepare workers for the future of work is exactly sort of where NAF comes in its ability to engage students in-demand learning experiences that align to the market, but also kind of cultivating those new, I would submit, 21st century human skills that we know now are necessary, to my prior point around technology and the disruption that technology is presenting across the United States. We know we need future employees that are equipped with degrees of empathy, critical thinking, the ability to engage in risk, to understand what it means to be resilient, high levels of self-efficacy. And that's sort of, I think, really the interesting future for career and technical education. And what NAF brings to the table is promoting skills that are based on these in-demand, not only skills or technical components of what industry needs, but also understanding, again, the value of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial related training and aims. Again, thinking about how we're not just teaching technical training, but competency-based learning in and around critical thinking, communication, high levels of empathy and self-efficacy, and engaging students in the ability to engage in risk, which, if nothing else does, creates creativity and added value to any employer of the future. I want to end with just one other thought. With the disruption of COVID and with the knowledge of the fact that we need to return to learning, at least to normalize it as much as possible, and with knowing that too, automation and AI face us in a way that hasn't really been realized before, and COVID has kind of accelerated that. The kind of opportunities that NAF provides students in on-demand and in-person training and working is just phenomenal and invaluable. And I would like to invite everyone to think about how we're teaching still too, not just the technical skills, but also the human skills around creativity, risk ventures, and understanding the perspective of others and critical thinking. It's just an amazing opportunity, and I cannot thank you, at least on behalf of the state of Florida and the commissioner here and the governor here, for everything that NAF provides in order for our students to thrive again in a future of work that we know is not only disrupted because of COVID, but will continue to be disrupted because of everything that we're facing moving forward in a highly technologically advanced and dependent world. So to everyone on the line, from the bottom of my heart, very humbled, very thankful, and very excited to be with you this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Chancellor, Mack. Is this crazy or what? Right? I mean, I don't think I imagined in my